Hour 2 of Overdrive. Brendan Dunlop and Dave Feschuk filling in for the guys on a family day Monday. What do you think they're doing? Obviously, they're not with each other. That's the work family. They're happy to spend time away. What do you think they get up to? I bet you Hayes is having an early dinner with the girls.
Oh, yeah.
5 o'clock, enjoying it. He definitely watched a lot of hockey, though.
Oh, yeah.
You think he's changed, or is he still wearing the same T-shirt he woke up in?
Oh, man, that's a good question. With Hayes, I would guess there's a 50-50 chance he's still in his pajamas.
Yeah, 50-50
Don't you think?
chance.
I mean, maybe now that his daughters are getting older, they're like trying to shape him up. I don't know.
Man works a lot of long hours. He comes here early to be in a suit and do Sports Center hits, and then he has to sit here in a suit while those guys are at home and probably not wearing any pants.
His day off. He can do whatever he wants.
Exactly.
And by the way, as I say that, I'm highly I'm encouraging it. Like, there's nothing wrong with sitting around in your pajamas on family day. This is the worst holiday ever invented. And if you want to sit indoors all day, watch matinee sports, and never have a shower or get changed, it's on you. Why not?
And just for those of you in your cars and listening, and those of you watching and can't see below the desk here, I can confirm that Dave is actually wearing pants and not pajamas.
Thank you.
Honestly, it's astonishing that more of us don't take that up. You know, I've never done a desk show in shorts.
I've seen guys.
I've worn mixed pants before. I think one time I think I got stuck where I didn't have this matching suit pants, so I'm like, well, I'm just not getting. I'm just going to wear jeans. But I've never done the shorts thing.
I've seen that around the TSN campus. I've seen the half suit where it's the suit, nice tie, beautiful shirt, golf shorts.
Guys in flip-flops, though?
Yeah, flip-flops.
I can imagine the flip. Frankie Corrado?
Oh, yeah.
Who else?
I'm not naming names.
What are the FanDuel odds? I bet you.
Leave the mystery. There's got to be an air of mystery to the broadcasting business.
You know who's never done that, I bet? Mark Masters, who we're going to talk about in a moment.
Never Masters.
But I would say FanDuel favorites, FanDuel odds, unofficial FanDuel odds for who would be wearing flip-flops on a day when you probably wouldn't expect it. It's like a rainy day in the summer, and then all of a sudden he's in flip-flops. Glenn Sheeler.
Yeah.
Minus 250.
Yeah, that's fair.
That's, I would say.
Yeah, he rolls like that. All the ex-players. Anybody that played pro sports generally is wearing flip-flops at all times.
They're against it. Yeah.
That's my experience.
You know who's always in game mode? Auston Matthews.
Yeah.
This season, constantly in game mode. Another goal, as we've grown to expect. I do kind of love how the pre-game chatter was. Hat trick last night. Would you bet against him scoring 50 today? No, not against this team. Not against the number 2 goaltender for the St. Louis Blues. Yeah, he might just do it again. We've grown to expect not just that he's going to entertain us every game, but that he's going to score more than once every game.
Yeah.
It feels like a failure. Only one today.
Yeah. They
won, but he only bagged one.
And another post, and he's leading the league in posts and crossbars as well as leading the league in goals.
Crazy. It really is amazing that he is performing at that level, and we're not talking about them being the best team in their own division, I think.
Well, they're not.
I know, but that's what I'm saying. At this level, you would have thought coming into the season, if he was going to have the best statistical season of his career, and he'll have one of the best statistical seasons of the recent decades if he continues on the trajectory that he's on. But they're third in the Atlantic, man.
I know. I mean, and they've needed every goal he scored almost, right? There's some pretty thin gruel beyond the core 4 right now on this team. And look, they're getting some signs of life from the Bobby McMahons of the world, but not enough signs. Not enough signs that gives you any semblance of hope that there's real depth here, right? And that's what you worry about. It's like in the slog of a best-of-7 series, when teams can really, concentrate on taking you out of what you do best as a team, is there enough secondary periphery scoring around Matthews to be a threat if indeed teams are somewhat successful in thwarting Matthews? And when you look at his, 20 whatever goals in 50 whatever playoff games, he hasn't been on pace for 75 goals in 82 games in playoff mode. Right, he's been much less than that in the playoffs, and I think part of that is teams just can game plan for you a lot better than do in the regular season.
Here we are expecting multi-goal games all the time, but as we've seen in the playoffs before, you can go multiple games in a row without scoring, and as has been the case, it usually leads to a playoff exit for them, which, as we know, the Leafs cannot afford this time, can they? Well, time to talk a little more Leafs hockey. Mark Masters joining us now on the Maple Toyota Hotline. Mark, how you doing, my friend? Thanks for spending your family day with us.
Of course. Happy to.
I asked earlier what you think the guys are doing. I asked Dave, and we were talking about how we think Brian Hayes might be dressed at the moment, and Dave's pretty convinced that he's still in his pajamas. How did you spend the day, and what do you think those guys are doing?
Yeah, well, it's just, what could you want? It's President's Day down here, and what the forefathers imagined, I'm sure, is spend the day watching some matinee puck.
That's it.
What could be better? 2 non-conference game, and yeah, it was a little sleepy early on, not going to lie to you, but so we got to enjoy that, and now we're packing up and heading to Phoenix. So all in a good president/family day.
Always working, Mark Masters. And, of course, a noon start means you are up earlier. So, yes, you might get to enjoy a nice meal later. But based on how that game started, I'm surprised that it ended up as a 6-goal game and the Leafs were on the right side of it, because it did look pretty dull, and it did look like, that 12 o'clock start was a little early for both teams. Yeah,
it was not much going on. The fans were not really making a lot of noise, and credit to the Leafs for getting going and being the first team and getting that first goal. Matthews, the rookie, kind of making it happen there. And that was important because, these are the games where you're facing a team that's not high up in the standings. It's still, battling for a playoff spot and looking to bounce back after a tough loss in Toronto last week where they only had 15 shots. So they were a bit better today, of course. But, it could have been one of those games where, the Leafs are lulled kind of into a sleepy kind of game and they get nipped and they lose. But they didn't. They got it done. The big guys came up with some big goals. And, it all started with the rookie, Matthews, on that top line to start the second period. He drew a penalty later. And so it ended up being a really good, feel-good game for the Leafs, to be completely honest with you. And who would have thunk it for 4-0 with Morgan Rielly suspended when there was all that consternation not too long ago. So a nice little win here for the Leafs today.
Well, that's the interesting trend, Mark. It's what now, 17-2-1, I think, is the record of the Maple Leafs when Morgan Rielly has not been in the lineup over this season and previous one. They went 12-2-1 last year during his 15-game absence with that MCL strain. What do you make of this phenomenon where they suddenly become a much more dependable defensive team without their number one defenseman around?
Well, on one hand, it's surprising. On the other hand, it's not, because we've seen this from the Leafs historically in this era. When they miss a big guy or they have some issues, that's when they respond. I think it's like 18-2-1 now over the last 2 seasons without Rielly. But one of their best wins of the season was when Auston Matthews missed the game due to illness against Pittsburgh, and I think it was 7-0 back in December. Everyone kind of tightens up a little bit, and the big guys who are in the lineup tend to elevate, and we've seen that from Auston Matthews, William Nylander with a big shorthanded goal today. Mitch Marner, I think, got the player of the game belt afterwards. So, Nylander said the way that the suspension happened, Morgan Rielly lit a fire in the dressing room with what happened and standing up for his team, and they've kind of felt like they wanted to answer the bell for him. And that's always a hard thing to quantify, but it's hard to argue with the results and what they've done. So maybe there is something to be said about how there's the emotions involved and with how that suspension played out. The team did not like the length of it. They did not, they loved how Rielly responded in Ottawa to Ridley Gregg, and perhaps that gets everyone's attention. And you can't argue with the results. It's been a great stretch here for them.
Auston Matthews has got national attention, continental attention, as we were just discussing. Yet it does seem as though, and I think the bookies still have him as the third or fourth favorite, that he's not the Hart Trophy favorite. The guy just scored his 49th goal of the season today.
Yeah,
and the clip rate that he's producing at. I mean, I just said to Dave a second ago, it is wild to me to see him performing at this level, which was, I think, every Leafs fan's dream, that he would sign a contract and have the one of the best seasons in decades. And yet, here the Leafs are at third place in their own division. Does that surprise you?
Yeah, it's a little bit surprising because I think when he won the Hart Trophy and he had a 60-goal season, I think everyone said, well, I can't argue, 60 goals. I mean, 60 goals. It's hard to argue with that. And now here he is on pace for 70-plus, and he's maybe, or we're talking about, is he going to be nominated? I think that there's maybe a little bit of fatigue with it, just because you've seen maybe some fatigue with like McDavid, because maybe if Matthews ends up getting nominated and McDavid doesn't get nominated, it's a really high-end crop. I mean, it's unbelievable what Kucherov's doing down in Tampa, and we're going to see Nathan McKinnon and the Avalanche at the end of this trip, but there's some compelling cases there, and only 3 guys can get nominated. But I don't know, where are the Leafs without Auston Matthews this season? Because I think most of us feel like this team around him isn't as strong as it's been in recent years, and yet he's got them comfortably in a playoff position. They did win that one game without him, but it's really really hard to imagine them. They would be life and death to make the playoffs without this guy. That's certainly, I think, probably the top game in his kind of Hart Trophy candidacy highlight pack is that Philadelphia game where there's nothing going on last week. They're trailing 1-0, and then in a matter of 7:49, he scores a natural hat trick, and all of a sudden the game's well in hand, and that's what he has that in his arsenal, his ability to do. So right now it's hard to see him, not being nominated for the Hart Trophy, but boy, there's still some racetrack left in this season, of course, and there's a lot of guys having some amazing years.
So obviously, we talked about Rielly being out, Mark, but obviously he's not the only key defenseman that they're missing. We know Mark Giordano's out, after the death of his father. Connor Timmins still has mono. Lagesson may be out for a while after an injury. What did you make of the Marlies-esque defense that took the ice today in St. Louis?
Yeah, not too shabby for Lajoie, Max Lajoie, and Marshall Rafai, who made his NHL debut today on the road. So, Sheldon Keefe doesn't have the last change. It can be a little tricky for them if the Blues want to exploit him. But I didn't notice them much, which I think is a compliment, because you would think, okay, is that going to be a pair that gets you in trouble? They seem to hold up. They seem to get the job done in the minutes that they did play. So that's a positive that they're able to get that, and they got one more game of this suspension, assuming there's no ruling from Gary Bettman tomorrow or later today, saying we're rescinding a game off it. So they've held up. And I'm not sure how serious Lagesson is, but didn't practice yesterday, didn't play today, and only played that $130 on Saturday against Anaheim. So you got to think it might be tough for him to come back on Wednesday. So it's. Yeah, I mean, again, it was a pretty solid effort all around, and it certainly, for those 2 guys, the Marlies guys at the back end, they've held up.
There are very few empty netter goals that are worth analysis, but because of that effort that we saw from Bobby McMann, I mean, this guy just continues to prove why the guys in that room seem to rave about him so much. And in terms of wanting more depth and wanting more intensity, give me more plays like that across the board. That should be the game tape that Sheldon Keefe is showing the rest of the room. And I don't think I've ever said that before about an empty net goal.
Yeah, 2 guys in different confidence levels right now. Bertuzzi misses the empty netter, and then McMann comes on and just won't be denied. It's hard to believe that less than a week ago he was going to be a healthy scratch that Tuesday morning. And then John Tavares gets sick and he gets tapped on the shoulder and scores a hat trick, and he hasn't really looked back since. He plays with Tavares today, so Noah Gregor is the guy who gets scratched, which feels notable. And McMann stays in the lineup, and he gets the tap on the shoulder to go out 5-on-6 in a 1-goal game and get the job done. He's building trust with Sheldon Keefe, and I like him. I think there's a lot to like there. The size, the speed. He seems to have the ability to put the puck in the net, a good shot. So we'll see how long he can keep this going. It's all about consistency. But the joke I can tell you in the dressing room after the game is, and after the last couple of games, is McMahon's trying to keep up with Auston Matthews. Not easy to do, but he's had a heck of a week.
Hey, speaking of the ongoing struggles of Tyler Bertuzzi, Mark, what did you make of what have you made of them to begin with? And then there's been some recent comments from Sheldon Keefe about how he's got to take every rep in practice like it's important, inferring that maybe he doesn't do that and maybe doesn't put in the time that some of the other guys do. You're down at practice as much as anybody. What have you observed on that end, and what do you think is going on with Bertuzzi?
Yeah, lately he's been out doing extra work more than what we noticed earlier in the season, because like Matthews is always doing it, and there's a lot of guys who do the skill work. The Leafs have a player development staff, an extensive one, and a lot of guys are able to get some one-on-one work or before practice. And I noticed him, I think it was maybe the Tuesday before the optional morning skate. He didn't take part in the optional skate, but he was out before the optional skate just doing some skills work, shots in and around the net, because he's been getting some chances, but he hasn't been finishing. Well, that's on him too. He's supposed to be a finisher. He's brought in $5.5 million not to get chances. He's supposed to be that next wave of offense after the core four. So Sheldon Keefe, what are you going to say? It's not just woe is me. It's not just, oh, I can't get a break, my puck luck. Well, he wasn't getting a lot of puck luck the last season either because he only had 8 goals in 50 games. And so his pace, as Sheldon Keefe pointed out, isn't that much different from last season. So they want to get him back to that level of the 30-goal Bertuzzi as much or as close as possible as they can, but just hasn't been happening. So work your way out of it. That's the only way to do it. That's been the message. And keep doing the good things. Don't cheat. Keep doing the good things that are getting you the chances, but you got to bear down. And that's been the message. I thought it was notable today they kept him on the top power play unit, even though John Tavares returned. Sheldon Keefe said that they scored 4 power play goals on Saturday, and Bertuzzi scored 1 of them, and they didn't want to tinker too much with that. But sure, that's a pretty big move, I think, to try and it shows you where their mind's at, and trying to get Bertuzzi going. Would have been nice if he could have found a way to put that puck in the empty net tonight or this afternoon and build on that and get feeling good and get a goal streak going, but did not happen. And it still kind of feels like, even though he got that goal Saturday, it was almost more of an example of Matthews and his skill and his talent than Bertuzzi finally breaking through the way it kind of played out.
Okay, so, you as an alumnus of the great team analytics in the classic trivia matches against Team Eye Test here on OverDrive, I'm surprised you're the guy saying bear down, because this Tyler Bertuzzi is Mr. Expected Goals. I mean, his expected goals are off the charts, Mark, and I thought that would mean something to you.
Yeah, he's also taken a bad offensive zone penalty and got benched in the game. It hasn't all been great. Yes, you win your shifts. And that's important. You get chances, that's important. It all contributes, it all adds up. But the way the salary cap is, with how he's getting paid, I mean, I don't know. I would expect more. You're expecting more. That's why he was brought in. So, yes, there is something to be said. We don't, it's not a witch hunt. It's not going crazy. In fact, most of the questions when we've been talking to Tyler Bertuzzi have been like, how are you? Are you superstitious? He made it very clear he's not. How are you dealing with the puck luck not going your way? And he's talked about spending time with his kids and being outside. Of course, he's a new dad. He's had a son, a second child, not too long ago. So there's been a lot going on in his personal life as well. But, you eventually got to put the puck in the net and saving it. Sheldon Keefe made an interesting point Saturday morning. He said, this guy's come through. He had 10 points in the 7-game series with Boston, although the Bruins do lose that series. It was in the losing cause, but he did have a productive debut in the Stanley Cup playoffs. He's won a Calder Cup at the AHL level. He's won an OHL championship. He's had success when times have gotten tough. That's what they're counting on, and I'm sure Leafs fans will be happy if he's saving them all his goals for the playoffs. But right now, it hasn't looked that way. But that's what they're banking on.
We're talking Leafs hockey with Mark Masters, who was in St. Louis to watch the Leafs pull off a 4-2 win on a Family Day, President's Day matinee Monday. Are you surprised that here we are, this point in the season, middle of February, we're not talking about Ilya Samsonov anymore? 19 saves today. It's just just routine. He's just there doing the job.
Yeah, it struck me as interesting that in his scrum he was just asked about his play, and he gave like a 1-sentence answer where he's just like, yeah, it's good. It's going well, and Sheldon Keefe said, it's not surprising that he's playing this way. It was more surprising at how badly it had fallen off earlier this season because they knew he could be this. But it's quite remarkable how much of an afterthought in some respects the goaltending storyline has been. Because remember, Martin Jones was kind of trending the wrong direction on that Western Canada trip. Coming back to earth. I shouldn't say trending the wrong direction. Coming back to earth a little bit. They had leaned on him quite a bit. Considering what was going on. Joseph Woll is still not ready to return, inching closer. It's really been on Samsonov here. They didn't want to go to Dennis Hildeby. Jones had the injury last week. And, you wonder, it's an afternoon start, the earliest start of the season. Samsonov was locked in. Again, so important on the road to get that first goal, and he was sharp early and held the fort. And, it's helped kind of make that a very quiet thing. And when you're a team, you want the goaltending to be quiet. You don't want to have it be a storyline. And I can't remember the last time we were really all that, going into an Ilya Samsonov scrum being like, what's going on? Where are you at mentally? He seems just to be in a really good spot. The team's pretty happy with him. And, I was joking. He's back. You know what's interesting? He's back to his old self in these post-game scrums. He cracked a joke today. I asked about Nylander as a penalty killer, and he said, sometimes he tips the puck on me just to keep me sharp. Because I was asking, of course, trying to be positive about Nylander about Nylander's penalty-killing prowess, and he said, "Yeah, sometimes he doesn't quite block the full shot." And then that didn't get necessarily the laugh he was hoping for. He said that was a joke. But anyway, it was just funny that he's going there. It was a light little moment, and we had not a lot of those early this season.
Right.
I do recall him saying that maybe he needed X-ray glasses early in the season when he didn't see a puck off the screen. Now he's back to kind of his joking old self, and he's looking like his old self in the crease as well.
Hey, Masters, I know it's hard to handicap what's going to happen when it comes to the NHL league office, whether it be player safety, doling out suspensions, or the commissioner, hearing the appeals of these suspensions. But what are the odds in your mind that we get an 11th hour ruling from the commissioner that, hey, Morgan Rielly can play against Arizona. We've reduced the suspension to 4 games from 5. He'll get his $40,000 back or whatever it is that he gets paid per game. And the Leafs get some modicum of justice after they put up quite a stink about this 5-gamer.
I don't have a feel for it. I mean, it's really hard, right, to know what they're thinking. Obviously, the commissioner likes to back up his Department of Player Safety. He did, take 2 games off the suspension for Jason Spezza. And, the big thing he pointed to was the clean record previously in his lengthy career. Rielly, we know, has a clean record prior to this. Was in the Lady Byng conversation before this all happened. He only has 9 cross-checking minors in his whole career. It's out of character. I don't know. I think you'd probably always think that it's unlikely. You always have to work under the idea. That's how I'm kind of approaching it, is like I'm not expecting it to be rescinded as I go through this. I feel like it still would be a surprise. I don't know, is there even a FanDuel thing on this?
Good question.
What are the odds Gary Bettman will reduce the suspension? It's possible. I'll say it's that. It's not impossible. I would have thought the Perron one, I didn't think an appeal would be successful. I at least think that it's possible, but it just feels like we're probably not going to see Morgan Rielly. What a way for him to come back if he doesn't get it rescinded, to go on the second half of a back-to-back against the defending champs in Vegas. That's one way to come back, and then go into the thin air of Denver and play Nathan McKinnon in the Colorado Avalanche. That'd be a heck of a way to come back, but I don't know. We'll see. It's really hard to have a feel on one way or the other when it comes to these sorts of things.
We're in Ontario, Masters. You can bet on everything. Mm-hmm. There's definitely lines out there that you're going to get a meal that you're satisfied with before you leave St. Louis. Is St. Louis known for the barbecue, by the way? I've not been.
Yeah, it's a barbecue town. Yeah.
So what are you dining on before you leave? You got to get a sandwich. There's got to be something good in the sandwich.
We're going to the airport, so we'll see what's at the airport in St. Louis, and we'll get some sort of barbecue. I think I'm looking at Peter Bradley, a photojournalist who's with me here, and he's throwing his hands up. Very good help there, Peter.
He'll make sure. Peter Bradley's good like that. He's I've never seen that man eat a boring sandwich. He'll find you something for sure. There you go, Mark. Appreciate you making the time. Safe travels to Phoenix, and we'll talk to you soon.
Yeah, thanks, guys. Happy Family Day.
Mark Masters joining us on the Maple Toyota Hotline. Check out Maple Toyota's huge truck and SUV lineup, including Tundra, 4Runner, Highlander, and Grand Highlander. In stock and ready to deliver. Visit mapletoyota.com. Quite a few Toyota shout-outs. I was talking about being in a Toyota on sand dunes.
That's right.
Last block.
That's right.
Good chat with Mark, always is, talking about full scope of things. I love, though, that for him, obviously, in all of those scrums, it's very noticeable that there's a little more personality for Ilya Samsonov, but you're never going to get an Ilya Brizgalov level personality or quote out of him anyway. But it's those little things that you're starting to see. He feels himself off the ice. Mark is noticing that. He's certainly looking more himself on it.
No, he has a lot of fun. When I go down to Leaf practice quite often, and you're just standing by his locker, he's the kind of guy that just wants to chat about the world, right? He just wants to talk about whatever. And he'll talk with, he's always talking to Masters. He'll talk with whoever walks up, and he's got a nice rapport with people. But when he was struggling, it was almost as though the team was sort of trying to keep him away from the media, because he was definitely wearing it, right? He was sulking a little bit, and he wasn't in his usual jokey mood, which is understandable. I mean, basically his existence as an athlete was being threatened, right? He was being waived. He wasn't even being sent down to the minors. They were like, no, you don't want to go to the minors. You want to just go away for a while. That's how bad it was, right? But he's turned it around nicely. And touch wood, for him and for his story, because obviously not only is it a big year for the Leafs, it's a contract year for him after an arbitration year with the Leafs. He's got a lot riding on this, and there's a lot of pressure on him. And right now he's rising to it.
Stringing together some wins, and the Leafs hope to continue that as they head off to Arizona in a couple of nights. We got to take a break. When we come back, we'll have a little fun, talk a little more hockey, play a little more likely to happen. Dave Feschuk. This is OverDrive on TSN 1050 and TSN 2. Back on OverDrive, but you got me, Brendan Dunlop, alongside Dave Feschuk today on this Family Day Monday. But it is OverDrive, where, as always, we announce a current or former Leafs player every day of the week. And on Friday, you got the chance to call in and name all 5 players in the lineup. Name them all, and you'll win a pair of tickets to see the Leafs and the Coyotes on February the 29th. Plus, we're throwing in a $250 Vanilla Visa prepaid card. Vanilla prepaid cards available for purchase at Petro Canada. Today's Leafs lineup player is Nick Ritchie. Nick Ritchie. There you go. You got it. I know people have been tweeting about it. People are like, hey, Hayes isn't there. Are you guys still doing the read?
Okay.
Yeah, it's coming right up.
Of course.
Don't worry, we got you.
Yeah.
There's your player. We'll see. Nick Ritchie. All right. Time for a little fun, my man. I mean, we've been having fun all day, but I've been looking forward to this since I first got the text from Josh Pulis that I was doing the show with you. A little more likely to happen. So, Doogie, as I like this, my friend, it's better when you dictate this. So run us through what's more likely to happen. I know you got some good ones up your sleeve.
Let's do it, boys. Well, we're keeping it simple. More likely to happen. I'm gonna give you guys one option and another option, and you have to tell me what is more likely to happen in these scenarios. Let's start on the ice. We saw Auston Matthews score his 49th goal, the NHL best, as the Maple Leafs topped the St. Louis Blues this afternoon in a matinee. So what is more likely to happen? Auston Matthews hits the 70-goal mark, on pace for about 75, or Connor McDavid surpasses Nathan McKinnon and Nikita Kucherov in the Hart Trophy race?
Oh, that's a good question.
That is.
You got to take you lean. Got to lean.
I mean,
lean.
You know what? Look, Matthews is getting to 70. I mean, you look at the numbers. Like right now, he's scoring at a rate he's never scored at, obviously. But at his current average, he's on pace for 75. If he even just regresses to his career average goals per game, he's getting into the upper 60s. He's a better player than he ever has been. So forget the career average. He's getting into the 70s. So I think that's the more likely. But here's the thing. I think McDavid's going to pass those guys too. So I think they're both very likely.
Yeah.
Because I think McDavid's going to do what McDavid does, which is continue to wow us so much that we just can't deny him. But Matthews is getting to 72, and I think that's even more likely.
I'm with you. The guarantee is that he's reaching the 70-goal mark. And, man, if he can string together a few more hat tricks, the fact that he's got, 6 hat trick games?
Yeah.
And it's the rate in which he's multi-goal gamed, right? 14 games. It's rare when you get one like today where he only scored one in the 4-2 win over St. Louis. So
6 hat tricks, the most since Lemieux in like the 90s.
It's nuts, man.
Incredible.
I'm with you. He's definitely doing 70, but I do have a feeling that it could be McDavid that still wins the heart of the end, which, hey, will give us a long summer of radio to do.
And guys, I'd like to preface here the FanDuel Sportsbook odds. Nathan McKinnon plus 160, Nikita Kucherov plus 270, Connor McDavid plus 340, third on the list, and Auston Matthews a plus 440. And that number continues to trickle down for how well he's been performing.
They know that Leafs fans love to throw money around, right? So it's
That's true.
They're bringing it in because they feel like the rest of the national media that the other guys mentioned get a lot more attention, but we'll see. I'm just glad this is one of the talking points we've got to look forward to for the rest of the season.
You got it. All eyes on March 8th, and that is the NHL trade deadline. So going to give you 2 scenarios here. One Canadian franchise, one American franchise who has not been performing as well lately. Let's start with the Calgary Flames. Chris Tanev and Jacob Markstrom will both be traded from the Calgary Flames, or the Pittsburgh Penguins unload and trade a star name from their franchise by March 8th.
I got to think that, look, both teams are really they were hanging on, in that playoff picture, but Calgary's lost 3 in a row. They're falling out of it pretty quickly.
They've only got 55 points, man.
Yeah. I mean, the Penguins are I think they both have 55. So they're both in trouble, right? There's no secret there. But the thing is, to me, it's more likely that Calgary sells off because Calgary's got the more marketable assets. Like you look at the TSN trade bait board, it is Calgary top heavy.
Yeah.
It's Markstrom at number 1, Tanev at number 2, and Noah Hannafin at number 3. Now, does Jake Gensel count as a star, Doogie?
That was Doogie's pick, actually.
Yes.
Okay, so if it's Jake Gensel as a star, that would be the guy the Penguins are most likely to unload. Although he's a rental UFA. Whereas, Markstrom's got term. having a bad year, obviously, but has had good years recently. So I think it's Calgary unloading Markstrom and Tanev, even though I also think it's somewhat likely that Pittsburgh and Kyle Dubas say, guess what? We gotta start looking toward the future here and get what we can for a rental.
I just wonder if he feels confident that they'd be able to get enough value back, right?
That's the thing.
Tanev is a more attractive asset than some of the pieces that Dubas is working with, and I just don't know who those buyers would be. So, yeah, I think Markstrom and Tanev are going to go. I also think that the Flames have a better chance of turning things around than the Pens right now. I think the Pens are just stuck in it. The Flames have played 3 more games than the Penguins, but you're right, they're both on 55 points. So something's got to give, and I think they'll make some moves and give us some more content for March 8th.
And something to note leading up to March 8th, and even in the wildcard standings right now, Detroit Red Wings 62. They are second in the wildcard race. Pittsburgh Penguins 55 points. So it's not like it's a massive margin for them to come back. The injury to Jake Gensel will impact how this is dealt towards the trade deadline. It's just a matter of what star name / bigger name will they want to give up, and if any. So that is something to note as well.
There you go. Laying it all out there, Doogie. That's good producing, man. Good context.
You got it. The Toronto Blue Jays, the starters are reporting to Spring and Dunedin, and one name that we've been talking about on this show at length is Alek Manoah. So let's do a season trajectory for Alek Manoah in Toronto. Let's do it. Alek Manoah makes the MLB All-Star game.
Oh,
or the newest prospect who's been in the system for a good bit now, Ricky Tiedemann, who all eyes are on him down there, and reports say he's looking very well. So Alek Manoah makes the All-Star game, or Ricky Tiedemann becomes a fixture in the pitching staff by the league's halfway mark.
It's also a good question. Based on how the pitching staff has gone for the Blue Jays the last few years, I think the odds, unofficial FanDuel odds on Tiedemann playing this season would be pretty high. I got a feeling that there'll be a vacancy, there'll be an opening at some point, and it could be Manoah not being an all-star hurler.
Yeah, Doogie, you're setting the expectations pretty high here for Mr. Manoah. I know he's come in chiseled.
Your Twitter videos, they really suck you in. You're like, oh, look how thin he is.
I'm a believer.
Like he's excited.
Best shape of his life, and he's going to be right back to all-star form. Well, he was kind of fat when he was an all-star, so maybe this won't be so good for him.
Trying to reinvent himself, new age.
No, look, the storyline would be awesome if this guy could go from the Florida Complex League to the All-Star game in the span of 12 months or whatever it would be. It'd be awfully impressive because he's been lost, and who knows if he's ever going to be found again. We'll find out in the coming weeks, but I just think it's too unlikely.
Yeah.
And the way people are talking about Ricky Tiedemann, 21-year-old, 6'4" stud. Looks like he's going to start the season in AAA, and there appears to be, to your point, the idea that there will be at some point an injury or an opening in the starting rotation seems quite likely, and he seems like the most likely to fill it
for sure.
And so I think that's the way to go there. This is about Ricky Tiedemann, and if Alek Manoah can reinsert himself into the conversation, it's going to be a bonus. But I would not expect it.
For Manoah, I just think being a consistent regular starter, someone they rely upon, and someone whose game we're talking about and not what we speculate is going on with his head, that'll be a huge win. That's the equivalent of the all-star victory, all-star nom for him.
Yes.
And he's still plugging away to make that rotation. He mentioned himself that is his expectation. There's no expectation of what he can bring right now, but if he cracks that lineup, probably plays at the 5 to start the season, that makes sense onto where his trajectory could go and if he could have a bounce back. The NFL season has ended, but we're already in franchise tag season. And that means some notable names will have to get on the franchise tag with their team or else they're out of the door. And that includes Saquon Barkley and Josh Jacobs. So, Saquon Barkley signs with another franchise, or Josh Jacobs continues his career in Sin City.
That relationship between Barkley and the Giants just seems so tenuous, right? Like they've been all this, back and forth. The disposability of, his position in this league now, the idea that he's obviously elite at the position, but has always felt like he's been getting the short shrift. How long have you been saying this marriage can't last?
Right.
And I don't know what's changed to make us believe otherwise, unless the Giants are willing to pay him more than they've been willing to pay him in the past. So I got to think Saquon Barkley finding another home, working his way to another home, seems the more likely option to me.
I don't know if he was the only guy, but both the Giants and the Jets. And no, there were some old Giants, but there was photos from the Stadium Series, and it's very rare that you see players in other sports like wear their jerseys to some event. And I thought, well, it makes sense. They're playing at MetLife. Okay, I get it, but like I thought it was strange. And Saquon was photographed alone, and there wasn't many other Giants. There was like a couple of strings of Jets I saw. Maybe the photos are out there. Maybe I'm wrong. But in what was being promoted, Saquon was like standing alone in his Giants jersey, and then there was some retired Giants that they had their own kind of photo op. So he's very much felt alone, right? As you've expressed, he feels that he's been underpaid for a long time. They don't value him, and as we see across the board, like that position is not valued the same way. I think it's much more likely that he finds another place, and I don't know if he's any happier. The grass ain't always greener on the other side, and I don't think the bank account won't be as green as it has been or as he wants it to be either.
Very true.
And yes, the tag window opens tomorrow and runs until March 5th at 4 p.m. And Brandon, you were mentioning that, and there was an interview during that game, and Saquon Barkley was repping the Giants and was talking highly of MetLife, saying it's amazing to see a hockey game in this type of atmosphere, so that could potentially mean that he is remaining in New York, but a lot will have to come in the way.
You know what I thought about that too? Like how much of the rest of the world that just heard about MetLife Stadium and realized it's in the place where The Sopranos was shot, and the World Cup final is going to be there, and they're like, "Wow, they play hockey there."
Yeah,
that's. I think it's stacked up well for MetLife, but internationally, probably a few raised eyebrows. Didn't think that was possible.
And when you have 150,000 plus watching 2 hockey games over a weekend, that's pretty intriguing as well.
Insane, right? Yeah. Hey, outdoor games, man. They know what they're doing.
You want to know another intriguing storyline? Let's go to the NBA. And LeBron James, as we played in our show earlier, had some questionable comments on what his farewell tour would look like, and he's 50-50 on if he wants to receive the praise. And there were comments over the weekend that he says, the Lakers might be my last destination. So I'm asking you guys, LeBron James finishes his career with the Los Angeles Lakers or follows his son's footsteps and plays with him for one season before he departs from the NBA.
To have the power that LeBron has, where we all know that he's thinking about it. He's been thinking about it since Bronny was 10, probably, right? And now we know, like, Bronny's coming to the show. You're not leaving. Like, he's still healthy. The body hasn't let him down. So, of course he's playing with Bronny, wherever Bronny goes.
Yeah.
Right? But you know, imagine what that would look like if the Spurs get the number 1 pick again, right? The Spurs are bottom of the West.
Yeah.
If it's them, how does that financially work that you get LeBron? But he just wants to be there for the league minimum just so he can kick it, play for Pop, and play with his son?
Well, you know, he kind of answered that on All-Star Weekend, right? That, like, whatever happens with his son, it's not going to be about the finances, right? It's not going to be about the money because his son doesn't need the money. His dad's rich. His dad's a billionaire.
Yeah, neither of them do. They want the experience.
Whether
to be able to create the Ken Griffey Sr., Ken Griffey Jr. moment, like, that's pretty special.
Yeah, the Gordie Howe moment, the Gordie Howe and the Suns in Houston and the WHA all those years ago. It hasn't happened very often, right? We just haven't seen it very often in pro sports in general. So, I mean, the fact that Bronny is averaging 5.7 points a game at USC and isn't exactly on scouts' radar for anything other than the fact that it's a package deal. It's an assumed package deal where if you take the son, you get the dad. But yeah, I think, look, LeBron's always been, he just says he doesn't like to accept praise, and yet he likes to heap it on himself. He says he's not sure about what he's, going to do in the future, but he's always had a plan.
Always.
Right? Him and his camp have always been very careful in the way they've charted his trajectory through the league, from, the decision which he may or may not regret to returning to Cleveland and delivering that 2016 championship to his hometown. Yeah, I'm sure there's another chapter here. I'm sure it's probably not going to be in Lakerland, and I think it's going to be really fun to watch.
It's going to be wild, though, if it's Memphis or Detroit. Right?
Well, you got to think he's got enough power that it might not be those places, right? Like it's like, okay, I'll come, but not to you. I'll come if you draft Bronny, but not if you happen to reside in these handful of cities that I don't want to play in.
Oh, to have the power. Hey, Doogie?
Very, very truthful by you. Let's run through one more quick one. Let's go back to the baseball world. And a former MVP, former All-Star, and a leader of the Los Angeles Angels
Get off the basketball court, Doogie. Okay, we're done with LeBron. Yes.
Had some questionable comments, according to Jeff Fletcher of the Orange County Register. Mike Trout is committed to staying with the Los Angeles Angels, at least for now. Had some questionable comments saying there might be a time that a trade will come. And I'm asking you guys, Mike Trout remains an Angel till the end of the season or gets traded by the deadline.
Oh,
but
that's a good one.
He has 8 years left on his deal.
Yeah, 2031. The Angels got him until 2031. There might be, I mean, there's a better chance that they change their name again from the Los Angeles Angels of Anaheim.
You're right.
Him winning there before 2031.
I mean, you feel bad for him to some degree, except he put the pen on the paper and signed with the Angels.
He wanted it to work. Shohei wanted it to work.
Yeah.
Just doesn't there.
Until they realized it was not going to work, and Shohei had the option to get out, and now Trout's stuck there. And look, I guess he could force his way out, and I guess we all should hope he does force his way out because the guy's played 3 playoff games in his career. Yeah, it's like he's been the greatest player outside of maybe Shohei. Until Shohei showed up, he was as great as we'd seen in recent memory. And to have him only play 3 career playoff games, if that's the way it would end, which is probably the way it would end if he stays with the LA Angels, real shame. So I hope he forces his way out. I hope he can find a way out. But right now, you look at it, he's their only attraction.
I know.
So why would they trade him?
They're not looking to trade him.
No.
If he throws his toys out the pram, as they like to say, then maybe he can find a way out. But I also think that they might be a little more wild card competitive for longer in the season, or maybe more realistic than they were this year. That tends to happen
because they lost the best player in the world.
Exactly. Yeah.
Right.
That always seems
Right.
to happen, right? There's a few examples. It's me trying to be positive Pete over here. But
I think that theory.
I don't think he's going to be there until 2031 to see out the contract, but I do think he'll be there come the end of the season. So I can't see a trade materializing for Mike Trout. But there you go, Doogie. Those were good, man.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah.
Pleasure.
All right. Lots more to come. This is Overdrive. We'll chew on a little something next on TSN 1050 and TSN 2. And I like the one that Doogie's given us to chew on. This is what we asked on Overdrive on Twitter, on X. How could the NBA All-Star Game be improved? Because we all know that's what it's needed. Here are the options. Playoff implications. World versus USA as the format, which I think would be a good idea.
Yeah.
A 2-day mini tournament. That was my suggestion, which I'll get into in a second. Or financial incentives. We've seen it work for the NHL, right?
Yeah.
Could that be enough for the NBA? What say you, Dave?
Yeah, this is a tough one, man. Like the world versus the USA is one that I've heard a lot of people talk about, but problem is, like, we sort of have that, like, at the World Cup and at the Olympics, like, every 2 years.
But don't you want to see Shea with Luka Doncic?
Yeah, I guess I do. I mean, like, you could definitely do that. There's enough international players now. Now, the problem with that would be, I don't know what the exact spread was this year. I'm trying to do it real quick, but this year you would definitely be giving certain Americans the short shrift because there were way more Americans than international players on the teams this year. I'm not sure the exact ratio, but 1, 2, 3. Anyway, it's so. In other words, you're giving all-star spots to guys who may or may not deserve it, and it could. And in a few years, it could flip the other way, where there's more international guys that deserve to be all-stars than American guys. I don't love that. Like there's something to be said for having a merit-based all-star vote, and the coach is picked, like, for the starters with the media and fans, and then the coach is picking the reserves. And that should mean something, and it shouldn't just be, oh, you're getting in the All-Star team because you're not from the States. Right. Or vice versa, if indeed, like right now, the best players in the league, what is it, the five most recent MVPs have all been international players. So at the top, the international players are ruling, and maybe they'll be the ones that, will have way more guys that are worthy of All-Star status than the Americans. That's what bothers me about that.
Well, that one's taking the lead in our poll.
Yeah.
On Overdrive 1050.
It probably is my favorite too, because the other ones, like, you like the 2-day mini tournament.
Yeah, listen to this. Okay, this is the concept. Adam Silver, you're welcome for another $1 billion idea. I've had a couple. The in season tournament, that was my idea.
Okay.
Here's how they do
You
this.
and every other soccer head on the planet. It was a soccer idea.
You have 2 NBA All-Star teams.
Yeah.
Okay. Now you can just do it however you want. I'm not against USA versus the world, especially in this format, but maybe just go East-West for simplicity. Okay. Then you have 2 other teams in this tournament, and you can decide how you want to do this structure on Saturday. Maybe you play shorter games. Maybe let's go college 2 20-minute halves. Okay.
Okay.
The other 2 teams are European teams. Now either you can pick one champion of Europe. Maybe it's just Partizan Belgrade or Red Star come over, Real Madrid come over, or find a way to have some European All-Star game. You do it in one American city. You make it a spectacle. The 2 games on Saturday, and then the Sunday you got the final.
Okay.
Boom. That's it.
So you get a couple of EuroLeague teams over.
That's how you get the world in. Because as we were discussing in the first block, the NBA needed this showcase to draw attention to grow the league.
Yeah.
Now they're global. They can't grow anymore. All they can do is sustain it and be entertaining. And they need to be more entertaining than they were last night in the All-Star game. I think that's the way to do it.
It's actually a cool idea. Like we have seen club teams from Europe and Australia play against the NBA teams in the preseason. But to play, hey, we got the NBA All-Stars against Real Madrid, EuroLeague champions, right?
Should be.
That'd be cool.
That's
I mean, it might raise the intensity, which we've been talking about. You can't drop the intensity any lower than it was last night, right? Like that was as low as it gets when you overshoot the over by 41 points and score 397 total when the Vegas over-under was 356. I mean,
undeniably.
I got to think, like, if Real Madrid's on the floor, maybe there's a modicum of interest in playing defense and proving to the world that the NBA is way better than the EuroLeague.
Any of those,
which it is, of course,
European club teams, or if you did a European All-Star team, all those guys are trying to prove they can hang with NBA players.
Problem is they can't, and it would be a blowout.
I don't know. We said that about MLS teams playing Arsenal and Manchester United and big teams in the MLS All-Star game, and that's worked out pretty well.
Has it, though?
I think so, man.
Okay.
But, we'll get into that at another time.
All right, I like this. I'm intrigued by this.
We'll get into more hockey. Chris Johnson, Josh Cloak are going to join us in the next hour. This is OverDrive on TSN 2 and TSN 1050.